All right, so for this video, what I want to do is just give some pointers as far as just the doing some clothing. I'm just going to do pants in particular. What I'm going to do is go to my object list, and we're just going to go ahead and we are going to lock the torso, and then we are going to unlock the pants. All right, so we're going to work on the pants here. We're going to go to layers, and I'm going to, let's just use grab just so it's clicked on. And now you see it says pants, so now I'm activated and using that one. And if I hit, all right, hopefully it's just, there it goes. Okay, it's like I hit W. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna go back to my torso section. We're gonna unlock that. And I'm just gonna go ahead and page down a couple times. When you're not, page down. When you're not having those activated, just go ahead and lower them. So we'll just go to level 2 is fine. That's not going to be too awful bad. Okay, let's lock that back. I'm going to hit Control, click on it, so I'm not in that. Go back here, and then we'll just click on that, and you'll see that now we are using this. Okay, so as far as the pants are concerned, really, it's not pants specific, but I just want to make one point about a couple of things as far as clothing is concerned. Just a couple of tips. So with this, it's pretty obvious, like, look at anatomy and use that as a guide, whether it be an animal or a person, which I think everyone's doing a person, but if you were doing something that's more creature-like, the main thing here is that you want to remember that we're going to do regular sculpt here. You want to sculpt, here we go. You want to sculpt the stress. So what you're going to see is that the wrinkles always, the fabric makes a big difference. So if you're doing a fabric that's very thin, you're going to see very thin lines. If it's something that's thicker, you'll see thicker lines. I would suggest looking at different fabrics and using that as a guide. The number one thing to do is the same thing I suggest when doing anatomy. It's just look at reference. So I'm going to kind of look at this, but I already kind of know some things as far as pants are concerned. But just remember that basically it goes away from stress. So I'm just going to hit Shift D, Shift D. We'll get to like level 4 is probably fine, at least to start with. And then have regular. I don't want a stencil. I don't want that. We're going to go to fall off. And we will go ahead and let's use this one. Will probably be fine. And I'm just going to kind of do the crotch here just so you kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. I'm just going to make this smaller. So B and M. And let's just see, draw a line. Okay, we'll do a little bit stronger and a little bit smaller. Draw a line. Okay. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit smaller and a little bit stronger. Okay. So as far as the crotch, what you're going to want to do is kind of draw the lines away from what you have here. Okay, so kind of like this. All right. So, and these will be a little bit bigger coming from here. So we go kind of like that. Okay. We'll just do something like this. Okay. You can already see, so you can see this is where there's stress and the fabric's coming off of it. Then what you want to do is on the edges, particularly important when you're doing using a mouse. I'm using a tablet again, so I can kind of feather out. But just hold Shift and just kind of smooth it back. Just real kind of smooth it back so that it kind of fades into it. The other thing you want to do is this. You want to smooth out the top, but leave the bottom beveled or rounded. So what I'm going to do is make this smaller. And basically it means I want to smooth out this side of it. So I'm going to smooth out the top side, but leave that bottom side. Smooth out the top side, but leave the bottom side. Smooth out the top side, the top side, the top side. What that means is, we'll just smooth that out a little bit more. Something kind of like that. Make sure you're constantly rolling so you can kind of see what you're dealing with. But to give an example, I'm just going to do a random wrinkle. It makes no sense, but just so that you can see what I'm talking about, let's make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to do a real strong one. Okay, so we'll just say that for some reason there's a thing here. And then what we want to do is fade it out. But what you're going to see is, if we look at the silhouette, what you want is this to be kind of belled. And then the top here should be kind of smoothed over. So it looks almost like a water drip. So it's kind of like this. That's what you're looking for with most of your wrinkles. So usually it's a little bit more tight on this bottom part, but not on the top. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and use the erase. I don't usually use eraser, but... Oh, I didn't make layers. Whoops. I should have made a layer so I could erase it. I'm just going to undo it. There we go. Make sure you do layers. All right, so So most of the time you're going to want to do things kind of like that, okay? So you get kind of the idea. Now, sometimes you're going to end up with things where his is kind of doing this, but you'll see this kind of zigzag because basically it's getting crumpled. So from like the knee here, what I'll do is make this larger. We'll just make that smaller. That was too large. And you'll see this kind of like zigzaggy pattern because it's basically getting crumpled up a little bit. So then you kind of do sort of a similar situation, okay? And then right here, this is actually going to kind of come back a little bit so that it kind of comes up and to the back, right? And we just kind of bevel it. Hopefully that makes sense. And then same thing here. But again, you can kind of follow what they have here as well. So you can see he's got kind of these lines kind of coming across. So we'll just kind of do that. And then right here, there would be a whole bunch. You can kind of see it all bunches up. So depending on the type of fabric and what they're doing, so these are jeans, so they're going to bunch up. If this was like silk, this wouldn't happen. It would just go straight down, and then you would see some crumpling on the bottom that'd be real sharp. But because these are jeans, they're going to do that. But if this was like a sweatpants, right, this would be much, actually what I have is almost closer to soft sweatpants. See how it's very soft, and this is more crisp. So you want to think about that when you're making the pants. Now, another thing that can be useful too, I'm not going to, because I don't want to do this whole thing because it's just then just be watching me do it, is when you're dealing with seams, those also create stress points. So if you look at it, you can kind of see it here a little bit, these little tiny little lines sort of. So you can actually do seams pretty well in here. So to do that, I might have to go up a layer. So I'm just going to shift D. What level are we on? 5. Let's go all the way. We'll go to 6. Okay. What I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and use the sharp one here. And I'm going to make this smaller. And what we're going to do is just draw where we want the seam to be for my pants, the outside here. So I'm just going to hold Control. And I'm just going to go ahead and just draw sort of something like that, right? And this would be one of those things where using that, the steady stroke wouldn't be a bad thing to use. So we just kind of, and then you just want to make sure it follows, okay? So you do something like that. And then what you want to do afterwards is, not that, you're going to hold Control, and then you got to kind of pull it. Make sure my spacing is kind of high. Let's make this smaller for this part. That's a little bit strong. I don't know what happened there. Let's get you down a little bit. And then I'm going to kind of, we're just going to, whoop, thought I was holding smooth. I'm going to smooth that out. But you're just going to kind of think the seams. So what you could do is look at seams and then use that as a guide. These are really, I don't know if there's enough geometry or what's going on here, but it feels very, very rough. So let's do this one instead, because I think maybe that fall off is just a little too stark and just a little less strength. Oops, thought I was holding, there we go. It's a little better, I guess. So we're just going to kind of basically use that as a guide, and then we're just going to make these sort of seams. And kind of the same rules before. We're just going to kind of fade them out. So they fade out to the inside here. And then you could potentially as well use this, sort of put a little bit of this. Sensitivity of this brush seems off. It's like doing a lot and then doing almost nothing. There we go. Like that. Okay. You could just kind of, so you just sort of brush them in until you get the idea. This doesn't look, oh, see, I was holding shift. It's like not, I think my keyboard's dying or something. So I'm drawing a stroke and then I smooth. Do a stroke and then smooth. And make sure you just smooth it inwards like this. Smooth it inwards. And when you see it from a distance, it still looks terrible. But when you see it from a distance, it'll look a little bit more like a seam. This is a little bit harsh, so I'll just smooth that out a little bit. But you create seams that way as well. But the main thing is think about where it's coming off of and where there's going to be stress. So like for instance, if he lifts his leg up, kind of like this one right here, you would see, like you see here, these lines getting created because it's pulling off of his leg, right? You can see it's kind of coming off of is neat. If he was wearing a shirt, why is that? There it goes. Okay. If he was wearing a shirt, what you'll see with the shirts is that you'll see lines coming off of the shirt, kind of like this, because the armpit creates stress, right? And then sometimes you'll see lines coming down this way, and particularly in the back of a shirt, usually you'll see like kind of the lines coming off the shoulder. You'll see some wrinkles kind of coming off this way, like this, things like that. But you're usually going to see that it lays off of it, and it's really dependent upon what the fabric is. Soft fabric will have softer lines, and then harsher fabric won't. I'm not going to sculpt this whole thing just because again I don't want you to have to watch the whole thing, but I just wanted to kind of cover that because more than likely you're going to have fabric. Obviously, you have things like if they have latex and stuff like that, but the main thing I would suggest is just research, look up the different kinds of fabrics, the different types of materials, and use that as sort of a guide. Okay. And then just try to match it. Just look at it and just try to match yours to there. And eventually you get to the point where you'll be able to do a lot quicker and you won't need to use reference quite as much, although you should probably always use reference because that way you're always pushing yourself. Hopefully that makes sense.